Chosen one, you didn't land here by chance. This moment has your name on it. Out of all the places you could be, out of all the voices you could hear, this is the one that speaks directly to the part of you that's been waiting, wondering, and holding on in quiet strength. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That shift, that pull, that inner knowing that something is coming, something real. Let me tell you, you're not crazy and you're not wrong. This is not just another message. This is confirmation. This is heaven tapping you on the shoulder saying, I see you. I haven't forgotten. You're right on time. You've walked through silent valleys. You've praised with empty hands. You've stayed faithful when everything in you wanted to give up. And now it's your turn. This is your moment to lean in and own what's been yours all along. You're not average. You're not overlooked. You're chosen. And what's coming doesn't just bless you. It transforms you. So take a deep breath. Shake off the doubt. Lift your head. You're stepping into something divine, something powerful, something prepared just for you. Let's walk this journey together. Because what's ahead isn't just inspiration, it's activation. Let's go. Looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. Some things aren't stumbled upon. They're drawn into your life when your spirit is finally in position. This moment isn't ordinary. It carries weight, timing, and divine relevance. It isn't hype. It's a holy alignment. There are no coincidences in the kingdom, only confirmations. And if your heart just leaned in, if something deep inside feels like it's waking up, then you're not just scrolling, you've just been summoned. This is a spiritual appointment disguised as content. So pause, breathe, focus. What's about to be released is not for entertainment, it's for activation. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. This message carries an assignment to meet you right where your strength wore thin and remind you that nothing was wasted. Every hidden struggle, every silent season where you felt invisible, every unanswered cry, it's all been accounted for. What felt like lack was actually alignment. What looked like delay was direction in disguise. And now that you've made it here, tired maybe, but still open, you're about to tap into what was stored for such a time as this. There's a frequency only the chosen recognize, and you've just locked in. This space isn't for everyone, and it's not meant to be. Some won't feel a thing. Others will try to analyze it. But those who carry purpose in their bones, those who've felt the sting of waiting while still believing, they'll know. They'll feel the stirring that says, "This was sent for me." This isn't about emotion. It's about spiritual resonance. Something sacred is being stirred. And if your soul just nodded yes, then take it as a personal signal. Your season of suppression is ending. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. What's coming isn't a trickle. It's not temporary, it's transfer. A release of what's been withheld, because now you're ready to hold it. You're not being teased with a promise, you're being trusted with it. Everything that felt dry, empty, and barren is about to be touched by increase, but not the kind the world talks about. This increase is internal first. Wisdom, discernment, spiritual authority. What's overflowing isn't just opportunity, it's clarity. And once you receive that, doors open, paths straighten. What once confused you starts making sense. This space is thick with confirmation, the kind you can't explain but can't deny. And every time you return to this message, it'll say something new. Why? Because your spirit will be in a different place, ready to receive a deeper level of the same truth. The layers are intentional. The timing is divine. This word meets you on the inside before it shows up on the outside. Don't miss it. Stay with it. There's more coming, and it's tailored to your next level. This isn't your usual encouragement. It's an unlocking. You didn't come this far to quit. You didn't endure all that pressure to break. You were being shaped, refined, and calibrated to hold more than you thought possible. And now you're standing at the threshold of something bigger. This isn't about hype or emotion. This is a release, a realignment, and a reminder. What is for you cannot miss you when your spirit is in agreement with divine timing. You don't need outside signs anymore. You are the sign. You don't need validation. Heaven already confirmed it. This moment, it's a shift. This message, it's your instruction. Let it reach the part of you that stopped hoping. Let it awaken the places that went silent. Because your life is about to echo with evidence. Not just in words, but in results. You've waited long enough. You've grown quietly. You've prayed faithfully. And heaven heard every word. Now it's time to receive. Not just in spirit, but in manifestation. You're not empty. You're entrusted. You're not just listening. You're aligning. You're not barely holding on. You're about to take hold of something that was always meant for you. Let this be the sound that breaks the silence. Let this be the spark that confirms the shift. You're ready now. And heaven is responding. There are those who have walked through long stretches of silence, wondering if they've been overlooked. Not because they lack faith, but because they've been living in a tension few understand. While others seem to accelerate with ease, you've learned to remain still in rooms where doors stayed shut. You've watched others collect blessings while your heart quietly asked, "What about me?" But that question hasn't gone unheard. It's part of a sacred preparation that doesn't make sense in the moment, but proves essential for what's coming. Delay isn't punishment. It's a personalized molding process. You've been hidden, not forgotten. When destiny is heavy, the shaping has to go deep. While others rushed ahead, you were being equipped for what won't break under pressure. It's not that you were behind, it's that you were being fitted for something weightier. What looked like scarcity wasn't lack, it was insulation. You weren't kept from opportunity, you were being anchored so that opportunity doesn't uproot you. There's a kind of strength that's only built when the spotlight stays off and the room stays quiet. People saw you as idle, but heaven saw you as being instructed. When things didn't come easily, it wasn't a sign you were doing something wrong. It was confirmation you were being taught to hold things others might mishandle. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned. And while it felt like you were being denied, you were actually being refined. Not everything divine feels like a miracle at first. Sometimes it feels like empty hands and unseen hours. But even in that stillness, your spirit was being sculpted. Step beyond the screen, join and help light the way for others. In those low seasons, you didn't collapse. You learned to commune. Without applause, you cultivated inner peace. Without external success, you found lasting identity. Without the crowd, you met the one who never leaves. Every unmet goal, every silent night, every unexplained weight wasn't random. It was the soil where spiritual maturity grew. You weren't left out. You were led deeper. And now, what you carry is sacred, not just shiny. You're not stepping into what's next with hype. You're stepping in with history. Heaven didn't just save blessings for you, it preserved them. What looked like withheld favor was divine foresight. You needed to learn how to move without noise, how to stay grounded when you're not being noticed, how to be faithful when the reward isn't instant. That training is the very reason you'll be able to handle the abundance that's on its way. Now comes the shift. Not a coincidence, not a random change, but a divine unfolding of what's been stored for a heart that stayed soft in the middle of hardness. The kind of increase that isn't just for you, but flows through you. Blessings that carry weight, not just wealth. Favor that's functional. Open doors that come with mission. You won't just receive, you'll release. You won't just rise, you'll reveal. Because heaven didn't forget the version of you that gave when you had little, that kept encouraging others while privately hurting, that remained kind while everything around felt harsh. That version carried you here, and it's the reason you'll be trusted with what's next. What you lived through is the proof you're ready. The process was never about keeping you small. It was about making sure your foundation was unshakable. And now, you're not stepping into abundance confused. You're stepping into it with context. You've seen what doesn't satisfy. You've learned where your worth doesn't live. Now, you carry a maturity that understands stewardship. Every quiet chapter had meaning. Every delay had purpose. You weren't forgotten. You were being fortified. And this new season, it won't just be restoration. It will be realization. The fulfillment of a promise you didn't even know you were walking toward. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. Now is not the time to second-guess your journey. Now is the time to lean in and recognize that what was empty was never void. It was being prepared for fullness, the kind that's rooted in truth, not trends. That's built to last, not just impress. You don't rise now as someone surprised by grace. You rise as someone familiar with it, as someone who knows the sound of breakthrough because you've heard the silence long enough to recognize the shift. This is not payback. This is placement, not compensation, completion. The evidence is about to match the endurance. The outer will reflect what has long been formed on the inside. Because this has never been about what you gain. It's always been about what you become. And chosen one, you're ready. Some journeys are marked not by what you gain first, but by what you go without. And for some, that wilderness of absence becomes the very space where depth is formed. You don't start this walk with answers, applause, or affirmation. You started empty-handed, wondering why certain blessings seem delayed or denied while others walk freely in what you've cried for. But heaven doesn't withhold out of cruelty. It holds back to make room. What looks like lack from the outside is often sacred instruction on the inside. You're not missing out. You're being made ready. When the resources are scarce, your resourcefulness grows. When the help doesn't come, your vision sharpens. Where the support was absent, endurance is born. You weren't passed over. You were preserved. In the silence, your roots reached deeper. In the dryness, your spirit developed strength that comfort could never teach. What others flaunted externally, you were being taught to carry internally. Hidden but holy, unknown but unshaken. It's not that your pain went unnoticed. It's that your pain became the canvas where heaven painted your purpose. Those areas where you felt the most pressure, the most questioning, the most doubt, they weren't random. They were specific, tailored, targeted by heaven to shape something uncommon. You were entrusted with lack because God knew it would unlock something sacred in you. And now, those same places that once exposed your ache are about to reveal your anointing. Where there was absence, there will now be assignment. You weren't just sent through the fire, you were reshaped by it. And the very voids that once left you desperate now become vessels through which divine power flows. The space where you once pleaded for direction now becomes the place you speak clarity. The seasons that emptied you are now the wells from which others drink. You don't just remember what you lacked, you now redeem it. You know what it's like to walk without. That's why you carry what others need. And it's not just about being restored, it's about being recreated. Heaven didn't just fix what was broken, it reformed the entire structure. You don't come out of this as the same person healed. You come out as someone reborn, not defined by wounds, but refined through them. Not just someone who survived, but someone who saturates rooms with wisdom, born of real battles. And that wisdom is not accidental, it's strategic. The ache trained your empathy. The gaps in your life gave you access to what's genuine. Now you don't speak from theory, you speak from transformation. You aren't echoing inspiration, you are embodying it. You became what you once prayed for, slowly, deeply, fully. You're not pretending to carry healing. You carry it because you lived through the kind of breaking that makes healing real. You don't just offer comfort. You are the comfort someone else has been crying out for. Your walk, even in silence, testifies louder than 1,000 sermons. Where your heart once broke wide open, now it overflows with vision. You once looked for a place to belong. Now you create it. You once waited for someone to speak life into you. Now your words are breath for the weary, not by accident, not by coincidence, but because heaven trusted you with the kind of pain that couldn't be wasted. Even your scars were strategic. They marked you not as damaged, but as developed. They remind you not of loss, but of what was built in the shadows. They carry a glory that can't be faked, a depth that can't be taught, and a humility that can't be undone. You're not defined by what you missed. You're driven by what's been revealed. And now, the evidence flows. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're prepared. You carry within you the memory of famine, but you now walk in a mindset of fullness. You used to cry out for guidance. Now you are the map for others. You once questioned if you were enough. Now people find strength just being around your presence. It doesn't have to make sense to them. It's never been about them. You've been appointed not because of your perfection, but because of your posture. You're no longer explaining how it all worked. You're living proof that it did. You become the answer you once begged for, the healing you waited on, the clarity you couldn't find. You are the fulfillment of the promise you almost gave up on. The moment you thought you were breaking, you were actually becoming. And now you walk with a quiet authority that doesn't need to shout to shake the room. Everything you lack now bows to what's been built. Everything that once told you not yet is now ushering you into right now. And every empty place you once hid is now lit with glory that says, God did this, and it's marvelous. There are those who walk with a quiet authority, not because of what they hold in their hands, but because of what they've survived in silence. You've been through cycles that tried to strip you down, moments that whispered lies about your identity, seasons where your spirit held on by thread and prayer alone. But here's what the enemy underestimated. Your endurance was not weakness. It was warfare. You didn't cave in the pressure. You were being conditioned. What looked like limitation was actually a sacred layering of wisdom, resilience, and clarity that only a chosen one could carry. The season of not enough was never just about lack. It was about the kind of stretching that activates spiritual power. You weren't just walking through hard things. You were being forged into someone who could hold heaven's kind of influence. It wasn't about delaying your life. It was about developing your voice. The very battles that tried to take you out were, unknowingly, preparing you to take ground. You were underestimated because they only saw the outer struggle, not the inner strength. The trials weren't random. They were targeted, strategically designed to silence a force the enemy knew would be a threat. You weren't just pressed financially, emotionally, or relationally. You were pressed in identity. But you didn't yield to the pressure. You grew through it. You remained when it would have been easier to escape. And that choice, it rewrote the outcome. There were moments where your name wasn't called, where doors didn't open, where provision ran low and affirmation never came. That wasn't rejection, it was redirection. The setbacks were setting you apart. You were being positioned while others were simply promoted. Because when you rise, it's not just a personal win, it's a divine statement. When your heart is full of God's love, it's a sign to give. By tapping the super thank you button and offering $100 or more, you become a vessel of His grace. Your generosity can change lives, reaching hearts you may never meet. You have a divine purpose, and this act of faith carries His light forward. Give now, and may His blessings surround you always. This next phase of your life is not compensation for what you lost. It's confirmation of who you've become. You're not just being elevated, you're being trusted. Not just placed, you're being planted in purpose. The access you're about to receive is tied to the oil you've gained in private. And that oil, it's weighty. It flows not from privilege, but from perseverance. The enemy's tactic was to wear you out before you ever realized how powerful you are. But instead of quitting, you recalibrated. Instead of fading out, you tuned in. And now, every seed sown in silent faith is about to break ground in open favor. Not because everything suddenly got easy, but because you refused to be moved by what didn't look like the promise. This overflow won't just restore what was taken, it will expand what was hidden. You'll begin to see doors open that don't just bless you, but build others. You'll carry solutions to problems you once cried about. You'll create systems out of the chaos that tried to confuse you. You'll release peace in places where anxiety used to dominate. You're not walking into this next season empty. You're walking in equipped, with discernment sharpened by disappointment, with wisdom matured through wilderness, with compassion born from crushing. And what happens next won't just touch your bank account, it'll touch generations, because you know how to handle favor without forgetting who gave it. You've learned how to steward silence, which means you can now be trusted with sound, not noise, but impact. Your story becomes the blueprint others follow. Your scars become navigation. Your survival becomes legacy. This isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving that heaven's process still produces power. Not flashy, surface-level hype, but deeply rooted transformation. You don't shrink for this. You don't soften the edges of your testimony to make others comfortable. What you carry now is holy. It deserves to be honored, not hidden. This is not the moment to second guess or delay. This is the moment to take your seat. Not because you're seeking spotlight, but because you carry solutions. Not because you begged for blessings, but because you became the vessel. The rise wasn't random. It's the result of spiritual strategy. And now, what's been prepared in secret is about to be revealed in strength. Not to stroke ego, but to usher impact. Not to gather clout, but to release breakthrough. Not to parade wealth, but to pour living water into thirsty places. The very space where the enemy expected you to break will now be the platform where heaven confirms you were built to last. You didn't just endure the pressure. You became the proof that chosen ones don't just recover, they rebuild the world. There are people who pray with open hearts, not realizing that their whispered hopes are building something far beyond what their eyes can see. You've asked for answers through clenched fists and tear-soaked pillows, and all the while, something greater has been forming beneath the surface. This wasn't just about requests, it was about realignment. While you asked for moments of peace, the blueprint was being drawn for a future drenched in promise. You weren't overlooked. You were being positioned for something your words could barely name. While you reached for survival, the divine response was structured around abundance. What you thought would be a lifeline became a launch pad. What you believed would be temporary support is now the beginning of sustained overflow. Your prayers echoed with need, but heaven responded with legacy. You asked to make it through the day. Now you're prepared to lead through destiny. You looked for shelter. What's coming will feel like territory. This was never about simply meeting the need. It was always about stretching your faith to match the future. You prayed according to what you could see, but grace has never operated inside your limits. Every delay was not denial, it was construction. Things you thought were blocked were being built up. Connections weren't denied. They were rerouted to match timing with trust. Heaven never worked on your clock. It worked on your capacity. And now, the moment begins to shift. Not because you fought harder, but because your foundation finally caught up with your future. This next phase doesn't come because you proved your worth. It arrives because you're ready to handle the weight of what you once only dreamed. There are blessings on the way that won't just make sense. They'll make everything make sense. The very things you assumed were out of reach will walk straight toward you, not by accident, but by assignment. What enters your life now doesn't just fill a need, it confirms a promise. Not just financially, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. In ways words can't fully define, but your soul will fully recognize. And when it comes, you won't have to question its source. You'll know. Not because of how it looks, but because of how it aligns with what God whispered to you in your weakest hour. It fits not your past pain, but your present purpose. You no longer settle for less than what carries divine weight. And this is the reward. Not just in gain, but in guidance. Not just in increase, but in insight. You now walk into more, not as a stranger, but as one who has been groomed for this. There will be no striving. There will be no forcing. There will only be flow. Because what's coming isn't just yours. It's tailored to who you've become. You no longer seek validation.